All right. Well, greetings and welcome to this episode. It's number 23. I can't believe that that's actually now a thing that I'm trying to keep up with Flesh and Plod, but I don't think that'll work for very long because they have a very long-standing record. But either way, we have a two outstanding guests today. First time on the channel, I will start with none other than, I guess, commonly known as Dice Commando. I don't know if you want to be introduced as your other name. I will let you choose to do that, but thank you very much for joining.
No, I'm Andrew. Thanks for having me, man.
And then we have Alex over there with his awesome cat. By the way, I don't think I've ever asked cat's name.
His name is Bubba.
Bubba.
Bubba. Yeah,
So
he's his technical government name is Ridley, but we call him Bubba because that's just what he is. He's just a Bubba boy. So, but he's a very needy boy. I just got home from work, so he needs some attention from his father. So I am also fab dadding it tonight and joining it on the podcast here. So
I think the closest I have is I have dogs. I have a couple of cats. No kids yet, so one of these days. That's actually kind of an interesting segue. Is when I was out there it was the coaxing. That was about a year or so ago, kind of in your neck of the woods.
that was a year ago, wasn't it?
It's insane how time has flown.
long
It
ago.
really has. There was like a book. I think Deb was her name. She drew this really cool kind of like children's book thing. I still have one of those on the shelf over here. So if I ever have kids, I'll make sure to give that to them. So
Deb's great. Very, very fun individual. I've yet to like personally meet her, but just being a local, I play against Michael Lau pretty frequently, and I believe they're together. I don't know if they're married or anything, but I get, it's just cool to see more people in the community continue to spread out and have fun.
So Andrew, since it was your, I guess, first time on here, I do want to say the latest interview you did with James White, that was fantastic. Congratulations on that. That was a pretty solid interview. I very much enjoyed that. What was your favorite part of that whole interview?
Well, finally getting him nailed down. So I had asked him to be on so I'm at like 580 episodes now, and I'd asked him to be on 500. And he said, no, call me in October because we're going to have something to talk about. So, and then we had obviously the Blitz announcement. So I think he knows I track the Blitz stuff, the Blitz Living Legend. So I think it's, it sounds reactionary, but I think he definitely had a plan. So it's not surprising. So
I was kind of, the part that I think you mentioned with the Smash Palace, which I might as well, let's go ahead and have the speculation talk on that. Cause that is to me, one of the most intriguing things of Worlds that just kind of, wrapped up. So he kind of sprinkled on some cool information that you got there. What's your kind of long-term thoughts on what this might end up being?
Yeah. I mean, it's RTT-esque, but not, round the table for people who aren't familiar. It's round the table-esque. It's probably going to be a multiplayer. When I say multiplayer, I mean multi-person type event. But I don't know that it's going to be focused on, like, it's certainly not going to be PvE, and I don't know that it's going to be. I think it might be around 2 players though, just meant to like be enjoyed in a different way instead of like a multiplayer format. But the fact that they pushed the Guardian pack back, like 5-6 months to line up with it is very interesting. He had talked specifically about Crack Shuffle Play being a major portion of it. So I think that's big news.
Yeah, I'm excited for that to come back. I as much as I'm not sure if many people think Bright Lights did Crack Shuffle and Play the best way it could be, but I'd imagine with the tuning, the fact that they're putting it into a different set entirely, I like the concept because it is that's something I enjoyed about Magic when I was playing Magic was the jumpstart packs. Being able to take 2 packs, slam them together, doesn't matter what they were, you were able to play them against your buddies and you were playing Magic. And I felt like that was such a no-brainer to be like, get these packs together, slam them against your opponent. Cool, now you're playing Flesh and Blood. And so I think to have that access available to more players is going to be good. And I hope that they fine tune some things with that. And also, I mean, with Mastery Pack coming out, there's going to be a whole bunch of new Guardian stuff in there. I think it's been spoiled already. We're getting new Valda, right? Valda's going to be in CC, so that's pretty cool. Although we don't know anything about her ability or whatever, so but it's going to be cool. I'm excited. I'm excited for that.
So, Andrew, are you familiar with any Magic the Gathering products?
I am, yeah. I
So-
mean, not. I couldn't name you every secret layer, but
No. The reason I ask
Neither
is
could players.
that's true. There's an interesting thought that I've been recently kind of bouncing around, and it was a product that was, I think, short-lived, but it was called Plane Chase, where you kind of had these, I guess, secondary location type cards, which Fab has locations and stuff like that. Do you think that there's any possible type? There are, like, as an example, some PvE. Teklo Crow has his version of things, so there are some kind of variations of player-driven ones that are like this. But could Smash Palace leverage? Do you think maybe like a dungeon crawl mechanic or maybe a plane chase magic mechanic kind of a thing? If so, what maybe would that look like?
I don't know what it would look. I mean, to answer your question, yeah, it certainly could. The location thing's actually really interesting, right? Like have a landmark on the table and it changes. Every attack's -1. Screw you, go wide, right, or something like that. Would be super manageable. What it would look like, I don't know, but I think definitely yes. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Oh no, I was just saying, like, it sounds like effectively something like that is, it's not like reinventing the wheel in the situation. In most cases, Plane Chase is used strictly for commander games, which means that if something like that is going to come into play, you're probably going to see it more focused in like UPF games as opposed to like a game of commoner. But even still, I mean, like gosh, like the people over at the Table Pit, they make like a brand new thing to try out in UPF every single like week. And that's where like, you think about the randomized items where you just take like a stack of like 100 items and put them in the middle of the table. And at the end of your turn, you flip over one and it becomes on your board. I like the randomness, and that adds like a fun element to a multiplayer game. But as far as a format that LSS will make, again, I mean, like that is a casual format, and I'm not even sure if that's like Smash Palace level casual. I'd imagine Smash Palace is probably going to be a bit more still focused on a more competitive side of things, even though it is fairly casual. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be the best part about Flesh and Blood is that you can make it whatever you want it to be, right? Whatever at the end of the day, you can put 40 cards inside a library and choose whatever hero you want and go against somebody else, and nobody can tell you otherwise unless you're in a sanctioned event. So
this question's a tad biased, I guess, because I love Cracked Bobble, but the Christmas thing that just came out, what are your thoughts on that? I was just earlier kind of showcasing, this is my kind of journey across time. Each of these are from each Worlds event that's happened: WTR, Arcane, and Crew. I was trying to go in chronological order, and I just finally got that in the mail today, actually. So I was pretty impressed that I finally was able to complete that. And then theoretically, with Worlds being in the U.S. next year, there is an opportunity to possibly grade some cards for that. But regardless, the Crack Bobble or Cracker Bobble,
Crackered Bobble.
I think it's like one of the tokens. It looks, I don't know. That seems pretty interesting. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I actually didn't think about that, but you're right. It's totally going to be perforated. I didn't even think about that. It'll be like the Yeah, I'm an idiot. I didn't think about that. I was just like, man, we have to rip this card up. Like, no, it makes way more sense.
It's the Chaos Orb. No, it's funny because I have this binder has a lot of old stuff in it. But one of the things I got when I was young was one of these giant oversized Chaos Orbs, and it's like, in a way, I'm like, I really want to, if I had a bunch of those, that's going to break my wallet to buy all of those, because if you do have to rip them in half, I'm going to have a lot of them for the games I play.
Yeah, I certainly don't think that they're going to need to be. I mean, you're not going to need to rip them in half to collect them. I just know that there's 20 different variations. I think the most interesting thing is seeing that one of the tokens that is being reprinted on the backside of this is a diamond.
Yes,
Which
you got that.
is
You did.
Oh,
which is that was only from the Rudy promos that had come out, and so it's very interesting to see that Diamond's getting a print. I don't even think all the variations that the Cracker Bauble could have come in were posted, because there's like 20 different versions of Cracker Bauble, and I think they only showed like 8. So it's pretty cool to see that. I of course, like, I'm always a fan of fun things. I have like 10 shitty Christmas present cards, because I just think it's like, what? Like, I've never seen something like this before. It's just so fun to see. And the Christmas crack baubles, and they always do something fun for the holidays, and so it's cool to see that they're adding a fun element to the games for even something just like a holiday season, instead of being like, hey, it's not all competition, let's just have a little bit of fun and just, open up some presents and effectively just do stuff like that. So,
well, it is though interesting this time, because in the past the Armory kits for Christmas season haven't been performance based, right? It's just like everybody gets their. Oh, that's not true actually. Squizzy Floof had cold foil.
Oh, that's true.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair enough. But you basically got it as a the S word Christmas present. You'd get it as an entry price, but this one there's actually a unique card, and there's only 4 of them. So people are going to be going hard in December, which is usually something they don't do.
That's another question. Is it legal? Because it did not necessarily say no. It's not legal in Commodore, Blitz or CC. It's technically a promo, but I don't know if we'll have to find out at some point. But that was something somebody pointed out, is it didn't release as a exclusive. I don't know. That's a hard one.
Special use promo is what they say in the card legality policy.
Yeah, I know it's the Cracker Bauble got hit on the special use, but I think I haven't looked at it personally, but from what I hear is that Spirit of Christmas has not been put on that list. And so a lot of people are speculating, well, is this a card that people are going to actually be using in decks? Like, is that a thing that's going to happen? And I mean, like, if it does, it does. I don't think it's going to be like the spice to win the Pro Tour. You know what I mean? But
what does it do?
I think it's a 0 for 3. Each hero chooses each hero. Player chooses another hero, and then they make like 4 tokens or something. It's like, I can't really get too quick. Each hero gets
an agility, a might, a vigor, and a gold token.
Yeah.
So Victor would like it. Gold.
Yeah, it is certainly good, because like effectively you would be giving in a 1v1, right? You're giving your opponent these, and then your opponent is also giving you these. So like, you're not able to use them on your turn aside from the gold, because all of these tokens pop at the beginning of your turn. But your opponent will be able to use them at the beginning of their turn, and so you're giving them a huge advantage. It depends on what the payoff is there. Gold is pretty important for like Aurora, who wants to get go again on things and deal additional arcane damage. So, I mean, I think it'd be a fun
it is
thing
updated.
to do,
Spirit of Christmas is on there now. I just finally found the page. It took me a while to get to it.
It sounds like a UPF card, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because in UPF, right, you could just have 2 people choose the same person and double up on tokens, whereas like in a 1v1 situation, you couldn't do that a whole lot. So I think it's a fun card to get, but it is the fact that you have to win that. But not only did the Spirit of Christmas come in as the cold foil there, but there's another cold foil on the line for the December Armory promos, which is a cold foil regrowth and shock.
Oh, that's true. Well, Count Your Blessings, that's not cold foil though, is it?
No.
Okay.
No, that's extended art. But the regrowth shock is the Briar one. It came as Briar. And so that is in there as cold foil, but there's only one. And it's supposed to be I couldn't find an article for it. It's supposed to be for the store champion.
Yeah, it's the People's Champion one. They've been doing that for the last couple, where it's the top 4.
Oh, is it a People's Champion? Okay.
Yeah. It's in play because they took the second mat away. Like, I want to say going into the summer, there used to be 2 mats per kit. Now it's 1, and then they've kind of backfilled it with this like one-off.
There is a lot of play mats. I at one point wanted to collect all the play mats, kind of like the posters that you have behind you. I started collecting a lot of those. I went and started trying to get one of every one I could, and there's just so much to try to, if you try to get everything or be a collector in those areas, it's almost impossible to grab all that stuff, especially some of the very original OG things like from WTR, Ark and Crew, like those just are almost unobtainium.
You had to be there for it. That's kind of it.
In the back, I have one of those wall scrolls of I really like the maps. One of my favorite things, like Truce is one of my new favorite cards because of the map showing on it. But I'm a real big fan of the, there's a poster that they had that had the World of Wraith map on it. So that's been something I've been pretty happy to find. But I don't think it's really hard to find those nowadays. So
yeah, it's definitely, you want to make sure that if you are going to be collecting, that you at least can, collect what you can. I don't think even with it only being a 5-year-old game, not everything is impossible to find, but you're going to be still paying a pretty good price.
The lore book is such a pain in the butt. I
don't think it's that bad. I mean, if frickin' Peter from MinMax Games wasn't hoarding them all the time, I'd certainly certainly go about getting one.
I definitely hope they do some sort of celebratory. Oh, how about this? So, Andrew, the Worlds just wrapped up, and one of the kind of community topic points has been Flesh and Blood celebrated the 5-year anniversary, and there's this discussion on whether or not that is really circled around those 5-year packs that happened there at Worlds. Mm-hmm. But there's also the thought of this is the 5 years, so that celebration, will it last the entirety of the year? We haven't really heard much from LSS on that. What do you think may be in store for the folks over the next calendar year? Or do you think that was kind of a one and done thing?
I think it's done, because when I flew to New Zealand last January, that was kind of kicking off their 5th anniversary. Like, that's why they were doing this celebration, was to kind of kick off the 5th anniversary. Okay. I know they weren't technically there yet, but with it being the 5th year. So I think that it's done.
So the 5th year World Tour was probably the capstone event instead of the other, what people are thinking is the other way around, most likely. Could be. Okay. Interesting.
That would be my guess.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I don't have too much knowledge in regards to if anything else is to happen. Simply because, right, like, as Andrew had said, the celebrational was kind of like the beginning of it, and that was heavy hitters, right? And then you move all the way until now, we're practically through that calendar year, and to cap it off at World sounds like a pretty good place to be. And I still think, even with everything, something that I know, Andrew, you're pretty passionate about as far as like limited promos for players for heroes and stuff, as am I. I was happy that I asked around, and a lot of people said that they had no problem getting their IRAs. Some stores had extra IRAs at the end of the day, and so I was at least happy to know that, regardless that I still think 16 is like a small number, nobody seemed to have an issue in regards to getting the hero, which I'm very happy about. Obviously, I haven't talked to everybody in the entirety of the Flesh and Blood space, but it is nice to know that with the 5th anniversary, it was everybody has access to these. And, if you miss the 5th anniversary event and that place, your LGS still has IRAs, in most cases, they're going to be just handing them out to players who haven't gotten them already and helping out the community. So that's good.
Little different than the Blaze situation, I guess. Yeah. Would you think we'll see a Blaze armory? I mean, that wouldn't really help the situation because Blaze is a young hero, so that doesn't really solve for that. What do you think? Is there a solve maybe for if Blaze might come up, since it doesn't sound like Blaze will be in the new set, which would be hilarious if somehow they slap that in there.
I mean, they could throw her in an expansion slot just to shut up people like me, right? But it's very likely she'll go in Skirmish 10. So.
Right. Yeah. She'll hit LL. Well, what did she end at? Do you know? Actually, I can just check.
I think she's at like 250-ish.
Yeah.
Like in middle 200s.
So that means that she'd be now at like 500s-ish, probably.
Oh, true. Yeah, true. So
because they did double everybody recently.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you? That is kind of unprecedented. I think I've watched I try to catch up with everybody's videos. It's really hard to keep track of all this, but I know that at one point, I believe you had a conversation or a video recently on the doubling of the points, Andrew. What I guess
Well, that was
long.
with James.
Well, yeah, that was part of that conversation. Yes. Will there be? I get the reason they kind of chose to equalize those for for a myriad of reasons. Will people in 3 to 5 years look back at that and say that do you think was a fantastic normalization across the board, or what do you think the future fab players will think of that line in the sand between the maybe original Blitz design and the new era Blitz design?
I think it'll come out in the wash. I mean, TCG players, especially on the internet, have like very short memory, right? So if you're asking people in like 4 months, they'll be like, "It's always been 1,000 points." I mean, maybe not 4 months, but you get my point, right?
Sure. Okay.
I like the change. I think the change is good. I do, and especially since they're implementing more skirmish seasons now, with 3 skirmishes a year, which I'm happy to see. I don't often dabble a ton into Blitz, but I always felt bad that Blitz was never getting quite the recognition it should have been as a format, and only 2 skirmishes a year was just like didn't feel like the format was as in the forefront, at least here in the States. We've heard from Paul in the previous episode that like Japan loves Blitz. They love Blitz, and that's like their premier format out there. And they just happen to be like, okay, we'll play CC for when the big events are happening, but they love Blitz. And so I've heard that Blitz tends to be the premier format in most places outside of the United States, just due to its simplicity, its quick matches. In most cases, you're able to like walk to the LGS, jam a few games, go home, hang out. And I think it's great to see that it's getting more here. And I've always thought that if they're going to be adding more of these casual events, they would need to eventually raise the rate of Living Legend points, because like 500 is, while there's only like 5 points a game or 5 points a skirmish, with how many there were due to happen, even though now they've implemented Living Legend into a lot of them, Blitz is still a pretty prominent part of that skirmish season. And so you don't want heroes to happen like what happened with Zen, where they come out, they LL, and then you never get to play them in Blitz anymore, right? So
You could also not let your hero be broken going into the competitive season, but
now that
That's
is very
valid.
true.
Yep.
That is very true. I'm
100%.
happy that we're able to see what Zen is. I still think Zen's pretty like nasty as far as things are concerned, but he does have a lot more bans on him now in Blitz than he did when he LL'd. So, I'm not sure what level that's sitting at, but I know still Blaze is a terrifying beast in the format, and with her still kind of being a limited hero to play, I'm curious how quickly she'll rise.
So one of the other interesting things that I've been kind of tossing around is that banned and restricted list that came out recently. They did advertise pretty forefront as an example that maximum velocity. I'm sorry, that wow. Why did I say maximum velocity?
High octane.
High octane. I
Come
love
on,
maximum
Maine, you
velocity.
got this.
I know. Jeez. It's because I gotta go to the airport at 1 a.m. and pick my friend up that's coming in from Denver. So that's what I'm blaming it on. It's my brain is fixated on making sure I get enough sleep tonight. But with that being banned from, I guess, Classic Constructed, yeah, technically isn't it banned from Blitz 2? Wouldn't it be from both?
No.
Well,
No,
because
just Classic Constructed.
just Classic. Because I was gonna say I can still play it in UPF. I was originally kind of sad that was the case, but now that I guess I realized I can play it in UPF and other formats, I'm not as mad.
You can play whatever you want in UPF.
well,
Don't let a
that's-
ban list tell you otherwise. You can
that's
enjoy it.
true.
That's the whole thing about UPF. Unless you're playing against in a big event, right? If you're kitchen tabling it with some friends, that's what it's about. I don't think you need to worry too much about a ban list in that regard.
Well, this kind of leads into the question is, Blitz has typically half the life of Classic Constructed. And one of the pre-questions I think we kind of were bouncing around was, may we ever see a hero that is above 40 health? And then what would that maybe look like in the game? Some other concepts of the hero itself has a lot of toggles you can move around, whether that's the intellect, whether that's the life, the hero ability. You have these options within it. What options do you think maybe maybe in the future for some upcoming set, if James is very hyped about not the 15th but the 16th set, what crazy things might we see in the future? Just as an open-ended question.
If it's gonna happen, it's gonna like if, and by it I mean a higher health hero. Guardian Mastery seems like a pretty good entry point. I mean, with Valda or whatever, right? So
Yeah. I think you brought that up. That I no offense to Valda players, I completely forget the hero exists in most situations, and I completely out of my mind. I completely forget the hero exists, and because she starts at 21, right?
Yep.
So if it's a direct, to adulthood from Blitz, Valda, then they would technically have 42 health. And I think when it comes down to like a healthier hero, I don't personally think like a couple points of health is gonna win, right? I don't think it's gonna be like a situation where you're like, God, I can't beat this hero. They have 2 more health than everybody else does. But sometimes you see that with things like Yoji in Blitz, in where like if you just turtle up, that 2 health sometimes can just change the game in your favor. But I feel like, Blitz it's a different beast in and of itself. I feel like 2 health, especially with all the different ways you can heal now in Classic Constructed and in Blitz, if your goal is to stay healthy and fatigue, then that's just been your goal from the start. I don't know that 2 points of health is going to change your overall game plan to make you the best hero in the format. Now, intellect, on the other hand, I think if you had a hero that started with 5 intellect and had 25 health, it might be a little different. But if your opponent draws like the nuts turn 2 and you can't really do anything about it, even with 5 cards, it's a different game. It all depends, but it's just fun little testing in that regard. But I don't know that. I think the intellect is a more terrifying variable to change than health, because obviously they can like remove health from heroes like Prism and Riptide and just be like, hey, you don't need all that health. You're going to be doing crazier things and dealing damage on your opponent's turn. You're not going to need all that health. And but gaining health, I don't know, there'd have to be some kind of or having more health than 40, you probably have to have some kind of like crazy effect occurring.
I think you have a good point actually with the points, or sorry, the health not really mattering in CC, right? So like to your point on Yoji about the extra points, you also need to remember he's sitting down with like potentially 10 armor in Blitz, right? So if it was Yoji at 44 health and 20 armor, then different story, right? But I think your point's valid that like over a CC game, 2 health's probably not gonna matter.
What about Brevran? I know Brevran is technically only a young hero, and the interesting thing about the whole you can have as many chivalry in a deck. I don't think they'll be in Guardian Pack Mastery because I at this point, unless there's an extra slot that they don't talk about on the box, there probably wouldn't be an adult version, because I think that's how that got spoiled, right? That was on the side of the box. Somebody spotted it was adult.
Yeah.
No, it's on the back. It says introducing Valda, so it doesn't mean that no one else is in it. It's like it's on the back of the box. It's like introducing Valda, super awesome. I don't know, whatever last name or whatever it is, but
yeah,
Chivalry is just such an interesting card. I'd like to almost see a way to have that kind of like a, in a CC meta, just to see what would happen. Like, because it breaks the rule of 3, which is seemingly a very fundamental core mechanic of Flesh and Blood. So
yeah. I mean, Chivalry's, it's a neat thing. It's definitely UPF focused, and so I don't know. It's difficult to add a fun mechanic, and I mean fun in the sense of like it's not like mechanically its value as a card is not as high as something like Command and Conquer. Like, it's hard taking that and then going, hey, play this competitively, because in most cases you're not going to get the same result. People who are competitive are going to not even look at the card. But of course, like, it's a fun little thing to do. And I think if you're running a whole deck of Chivalry in a 1v1 match, I don't even think you can use it. Am I correct in saying so? Because you can block other people, but you can't block You can block yourself.
It
What chivalry
defends
do
3.
again? Right?
It defends 3.
It's just a block card, right? It's just block 3.
Yeah, it
Pretty
defends.
sure. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. It's fun. But at that point, you got to figure out like what your end game is if you're trying to be like fatigue or whatever. And there's a lot to it. I hate thinking so like technically into decks because like I enjoy just like jank stuff every now and again. But that's also why I like playing Blitz every now and again. It's because like sometimes I can just be like, whoa, all right, cool, this combo works. I can OTK my opponent. Cool. Like we can just close it on out, right? But when it comes to Classic Constructed, it's so difficult to say like every single card that gets printed might as well just have like a number on it printed that says like this is the value of this from like 1 to 10. And if it's not anywhere near like a 7 to 10, most people will just be like, whatever.
That's the new Magic Commander system, isn't it? the
No.
4-tier deck. I don't know if I want that. Like that's
Maybe not that.
Well, by the time this comes out, which will be about Monday of next week, so it'll be the 18th, Calling Portland will be, I think, just shortly thereafter that next weekend. So I kind of wanted to maybe let Andrew talk about a little bit of that because that seems like a kind of an interesting, I would say, deflection from the standard norm, given that it's the first ever commoner event. So obviously, I'm sure you are beyond excited about that. Now, if I was closer, I would totally personally try to go, but flying halfway across the country for that, I don't know if I can, unpack the suitcase fast enough to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, so so this is the 50th calling, which is kind of fun. So there's some pomp and circumstance around that as well. They're going into the vault, pulling out some pretty awesome. It's a Crown of Providence.
Yeah, I saw
There's
that.
only like 8 or 10 left. I don't know if they said how many left, but not many is the answer. But yeah, the commoner battle hardened. So they had kind of approached me a while back, and they're like, "What do you think if we did this? Like, is it crazy?" And I'm like, "If we're gonna do it in Portland, right? Because of our commoner support." So, it's well known that they use the battle hardens kind of as a quote unquote test market, not only just for geography but also for other stuff. So I would imagine if this does well, we'll see more. If not, then hey, we had fun, right?
I hope it does well. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's a little bit more functional for folks to be able to get in. I mean, I've had a lot of friends that played Magic that have been very disenfranchised with the recent events, from all of the Marvel stuff and fiascos with websites to every other, you name it, under the sun, right? There's a myriad of things that they're just seemingly doing very incorrect. But they're looking at Flesh and Blood, and while some of them were kind of able to get in, at the same token, it's nicer to have, if you can just say, hey, here's a $50 deck and you can be as competitive as the next, person. It's really just the enjoyment factor of having fun, because you are there obviously going for that, Gold Foil Crown of Providence. That's not a cheap card. But at the same time, you can still have fun when you're going there. But I would imagine you'd probably get a larger swath of people if it's just commons, versus having to have the full tuned out, Majestic deck with legendaries. And I'm hoping the turnout's big.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. On paper, it makes it like on paper it should be set up to be huge, right? But like Fab very much has a over competitive stigma with it. It does. So a lot of people might just not come out. And then remember, the Crown of Providence is for the calling. It's for the calling, not for the battle hardened.
Okay.
Yeah, battle hardened, you're getting just a legendary gold foil.
That's still good. That's still good.
Yeah, and a PTI. It's absolutely great. I think still, like, as far as like a commoner event goes, like it's crazy to think that, everybody, I should say everybody, but like most of the people who end up talking to me about like budget stuff and things like that, because I'm making a bunch of budget content. People are just like, oh yeah, it's like so difficult to like, I could never be able to buy all these cards and then go compete and then make all this stuff happen and then travel all over to these places. I'm like, yeah, like it's expensive to be competitive in like any TCG theoretically. So that is the case. But can you imagine just being like, oh yeah, I play on Talishar every now and again, but like something's coming to Portland, I'm going to go spend my $10 on an Icelander deck and go enter into a battle hardened and possibly win a thousands of dollars worth of a cold foil and also a PTI into an even bigger event on a commoner scale. I think I think a lot of like professional players who are big into CC are even going to be looking at that and going, wow, this is going to be spiked. I'm going to be able to spike this, right? I'm going to be able to hop in there and grab whatever hero I want, like just go buy Ira and then go and play it and it'll be totally fine. But, if they have not been playing in Commoner, they're not sure what exactly the meta is, what people are looking for. And like, in our experience, right? Like we know it's not like a wide swath of a meta. I mean, we have maybe like 6 heroes that are really like, you should probably know how to play into these guys. But for the most part, it is still like you could still experience anything. I mean, you could have, I'm not even sure if I'm not even sure if like the meta is going to be what we think it is, right? Somebody can be testing something for, 7 months they've been on a certain hero and they're just like, yep, I have an answer to every single one of these in the meta. I'm going to go clear out Portland and take home a legendary gold foil. So it's very Wild West.
You two would be the best to ask this question. I kind of just had to do a little bit of research while you were chatting there because I was curious. With Commoner, it's the young hero that I guess is what you play with. And with Clash, it's also a young hero. Is there a format that is adult hero, but with the restrictions of Commoner, such as only commons or the common rare? Do you think that format would even be something that would be pursued later down the road? It sounds kind of interesting.
Not by LSS, probably. Not by LSS. Something that and I'm sure it's been floating around somewhere. I still have to finish a video on it. But we at the Clash Committee, we've talked about a format that I coined initially because I thought, well, how do we even bring this into a way that I can make budget decks for CC players for them to get into the game and understand a little bit better? And so like outside of armory decks, right? Like what about living legend heroes? Just people who like want to just play and try into that. And so I thought about a format that I'm calling Brawl, or that we collectively are calling Brawl, which is that. It's just what we are doing with Clash, essentially taking a format such as Classic Constructed and then restricting it to strictly have only certain amounts of cards, Majestic equipment only, no legendaries, no fableds, commons and rares in the main deck, or your specializations can be any rarity. Same rules as Clash, just with Classic Constructed. And it's taken off pretty quick from what we can tell. We have some players who tend to run it at their armories, and they tend to have a lot of like really fun times with it. Obviously, it's not going to be that way for everybody, but I do think that is. I think that making a Classic Constructed format that is restricted in that level is. I mean, at that point, they don't want to like turn people away from playing the actual Classic Constructed. So making another Classic Constructed format that's just cheaper, I feel like is based solely on if the players want it, they can make it happen. And I don't know that LSS is going to like truly make one, but as far as that goes, there's not an official one that's due to come out, as far as I know.
I mean, I'm sure there's a million ways to create different formats over the time, and that's where some of those, like I said, the Teclocro PV and other various versions of those exist. I was trying to make a comprehensive list, which at one point, I swore on the actual game LSS official site, I thought Clash was on there, but I guess maybe I was wrong. I thought it was.
Nope. It's on. You can build decks with it on Fabry.
Fabry. I knew it was on Fabry. There are definitely a bunch of different ones. I mean, Cube's on there. That was another one. I don't hear a lot of people talking about Cube. I know that there's the Fab Cube. I've seen that website. They got a pretty unique tool recently. If you haven't seen that, it's actually pretty cool. It's like a data analytics thing where there's kind of talks about the different pieces. If you haven't checked that out, highly recommend looking at it. So
yeah, Cube is cool. I mean, I certainly would enjoy a nice. I know there were people who were when Dusk Till Dawn came out. Everybody was talking about making a Light and Shadow Cube because that was like a fun little thing to do with everybody. But yes, I mean, as far as like Clash not being on the main site, it's never been a format, and I'm going to be entirely honest as somebody on the committee, it's never going to be a format that LSS is gonna do because at the end of the day, Commoner is their premier budget format. What we are doing is essentially just going, we like Blitz, but we don't want to spend money on Blitz. So we're restricting ourselves to only play for these cards and still keeping it slightly thematic. So it is, I think it's fine that it stays a fan-made format. And frankly, I hope it does. We're not trying to be, I say we, I'm not speaking for like the entirety of the Clash, player base, but I'd imagine that we're not trying to become like Commander, right? We're not trying to like slither our way into LSS and be like, hey, notice us, senpai, please. Like, we need to, we want our format. Like, again, with card games, people can play however they want, whenever they want, in whatever fashion they need be. If it's at kitchen table or if their armory wants to run something like it, then that's totally fine, right? If that's how players want to play it, that's great. But unless like 50% of the player base of Flesh and Blood wakes up one morning and goes, you know what? I'm only going to play Clash. And then even still, Ellis is going to say, okay, cool, play Blitz. Don't play Clash. Because why? Like, why would you, it's not going to be anything that is going to be a premier thing for them. I wouldn't want them wasting their man hours on Clash when they have significantly better plans for the entirety of the format. And if I'm going to be honest, the reason I liked Clash so much and still like Clash, the reason I initially got into it is because I felt Runeblades were getting shorthanded in Commoner pretty hard. And after Rosetta, we're not in that situation anymore. So I've always enjoyed Commoner a lot more than Clash personally, just because I know that as the game continues to grow, there will be more commons that are printed, and those commons will feed into Commoner, and we will see a growth and change. I mean, like, I wasn't expecting Enigma to do as well as she is in Commoner, and she's killing it. So it's good, but that's kind of the whole thing with fan formats. It's just play them if you like them, but if you're going to go to a premier event, you're probably just going to kitchen table them. Go play like a draft instead. Those are cool.
I was going to say, I was going to talk one more thing about calling Portland. So I believe I overheard you mention in the earlier part of this that you'll be live streaming that. Sounds like yourself. Is that correct, Andrew?
I will not be live streaming. I will be recording.
Oh, recording it. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, because they'll be live streaming the calling.
Okay. Got it.
So I will be recording and then doing my damnedest to get it up as soon as possible, because the community is always so patient. So
sure. I was. What kind of? Maybe you willing to give some insight into kind of maybe some of the gear and tech that you're going to choose to use for how you might approach that?
It's a handy cam and a tripod, and Nathan from Savage Feats has offered to help with the umbrella blockers and whatever, right, to stop glare. But
nice.
It'll be what it'll be, kids. It'll be what it'll be.
I'll take anything.
Is Nathan out in Portland?
He is. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Nice. Sweet.
Yeah, him and I hung out last weekend, actually.
Cool.
There you go. I'm so excited, honestly. Like, and that's how I feel. Like, even if you shot it on like a flip phone, I'd be like, yeah, like, give me this.
Something's better than nothing, right?
It's really, really, because again, like, not only is something that Andrew and I talked about, I believe, and when we had our collaboration not too long ago, where it's incredibly important that people get eyes on this if they do not already have them, right? Because that way, not a lot of people get to see Commoner in action on a regular basis. I know I make deck text for it. Andrew makes deck text for it, which you should go check out all the deck text he's got going on right before Portland. And in most cases, we're kind of going over how the decks play, but there's not like in-depth gameplay with all that stuff, because in most cases, players who are trying out Commoner probably know how to play it in most situations. But I think that seeing gameplay, seeing the competitiveness of Commoner, seeing the way that decks can really change and shift depending on the cards that you're limited to. I mean, I think we even saw it during the 5th anniversary live stream, where they quite literally played Commoner on stream, and that was crazy cool to see. And I think it's it's important that people are able to see more content of it, and for Andrew to be doing his best to record anything that he can get out of the Battle Hardened is certainly going to be helpful for the commoner community as a whole, and then also just as, you know, a new gateway to get players into the game.
Well, I had a fun little segue here, just because I typically, when I can find things that relate to guests I have on the show, I like to treat them with various little random goodies. I happened to dig in my Wayback Machine, and I happened to find a nice little Destiny pack with the dice in it. I've opened some over the course of time, but if you're interested, we can open one of those for you on here. And for Alex,
wait, what set is it?
This one is called Convergence. Yeah. I don't know how close to the end of that game there was. I kind of
7.
7.
Set 7 of 9.
Have you ever heard me leverage the word? I called it the WoW line. Typically in TCG Player, there's the World of Warcraft card game, and I always like to kind of gauge where games are based on whether they surpass or are under the card count. For that. So I typically refer to that as the WoW line. And I believe, if I remember right, Destiny did surpass that, but it ended very shortly after that. And that's kind of typically the 3 to 5 year mark, I think, for some. I don't remember. Was Destiny out for 3 to 5 years? I don't remember.
It was, I want to say like just over 3 years. I mean, it had a long tail between its like actual real death because of COVID, but it was announced that it was ending at like the 3 year mark, and then, you know, it took them forever to get their last set out. And so,
well, I've heard that I've played Star Wars Unlimited a little bit, but I heard that's kind of like a spiritual successor to Destiny in some way. I don't know how true that statement is, but sounds like some of the mechanics are.
Sounds like they fixed a lot of their Fantasy Flight Games is a horrible
Yeah,
it sounds like they fixed.
Anytime that symbol's on a game, it's a scary proposition for anybody.
Yeah, so. I've only heard poor things about Fantasy Flight, and I mean, when I initially saw the Star Wars Unlimited stuff being sent out, I'm just like, wow, like they're doing it again. Are they sure? Like, is this gonna be better? But I personally haven't even touched the game, but I just know that like overall the Star Wars IP tends to just like survive the test of time, regardless if it's through a new game or through the same game that people have loved, 20 years ago. They're gonna find a way to make it happen, and so Star Wars IP is good.
Well, before we
Star Wars nerds will buy shiny Darth Vaders, like they will do.
Yeah.
So.
I was going to say, before we depart kind of the Fab ecosystem and maybe chat about other things that are not necessarily directly Fab related, is there any other Fab related chat or talk that you want to bring to the table?
Yeah, well, actually, I kind of wanted to go back to something Alex was saying earlier about the Blitz seasons, on how there was 2, right? And 2024 was actually the first year we had 2. I mean, because we used to have 3. And they've been dialing back on that because, to be blunt, and this is my opinion, right? This is my opinion, to be clear, but it's that the competitive players got in their ear and told them they didn't like Blitz, and that's why it got removed from Worlds. That's why they removed Skirmish. So the question I had for the 2, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, I believe if I recall one of the earlier Worlds, there was both. The James White specifically said it's draft, Blitz, and CC to make sure that you were the best at all of the game. So I was kind of surprised to hear it was gone this year, if I understood it correctly. So
yeah, it's been gone for 2 years now, but the very first one in San Jose was all 3, and it was their way to showcase. And something you also need to remember back then is that Blitz was actually their most played format, and arguably still is. It's just that more Blitz games are happening not in Gym now than right. Whereas if you play CC, you're logging that baby in Gym, right? Yeah. So I don't, whether you can argue with my data, which isn't data, so fine. But so the question I have for you is, for both, is, are we at the point where we're actually taking away players' agency by listening so much to the competitive players?
I have a lot to say on that, but Alex, I'll let you go first.
No, please. You go ahead. I'm sure I've spoken about this 8 ways to Sunday already, so by all means.
So if you are unaware, I don't know how much you know about the items that I typically buy or what I kind of make content around specifically, but I own that I'm aware of, I would say every LSS branded, officially released product that's not some sort of exclusivity kind of a component. So every Blitz deck that's been released, all the Armory decks so far, pretty much I've done all the booster packs, the large. Well, I guess that includes the other pop. I guess now collection kits, things like that, the UPF kit. So I think that the listening to the agency, right? If I look at this from I am a non-competitive player. I just do not jive with the whole I'm going to sit down and experience I get my face smashed in and I don't think, I guess personally, I'm not that good at the game. I enjoy having fun with the game, but I know that I'm not going to be the Albert Einstein in the room. I'm not going to be the person that's like Michael Hamilton that knows the ins and outs of this, specific hero that would be able to get into those top positions in the player base. So for me, I already know that my enjoyment factor is down in the fun ecosystem. So I'm going to spin this in a little bit of a different way, where I heard a lot of people complain about CYB recently. And the player agency behind that, as an example, from a casual player or from a UPF player, I could care less if CYB was in every deck. It's a generic, right? So make it a functional rule for one event that if you enter, you must have all copies of CYB in your deck list, period, and just let it happen. Just let it play out for whatever reason, because it's generic. It will fit in every class. And the reason that would be interesting is because if you did the exact opposite of what the players are asking for, or in this case, people are saying, hey, remove it, it's a bad thing, or it messes my game up. Maybe by listening to them too much, you begin to kind of enable that, I don't want to say WotC engine, but Wizards of the Coast, I hear a lot of those complainy kind of things, like the functionally unique cards, as an example, that came out with like the Walking Dead in Magic the Gathering, where I know that was a big hoo-ha kind of a scenario, kind of similar to in Flesh and Blood. There's the Blaze promo, right? You have people complaining. Complaining may not be a proper way to say it, but just
I was.
We're complaining. We're absolutely complaining about
it. Globally, I was in the right place at the right time. I'm in Indianapolis, which is where Gen Con was. I had the opportunity to get it. But if that was a Japan only card, I would have been screwed, right? I would have had to gone to the secondary market to get it. So I think that listening to the player base has to be done with a grain of salt. And I think LSS has done a decent job at not catering to every request. But at the same token, I think that there are some requests that they haven't listened to. I'm going to go back to Armory decks because I know that they've been in quick succession coming out. But even with the Dash deck, the KO deck was first. You got the Bolton one. Now we're going to have the Jarl one. You get no rule book. You get no playmat. You get basically nothing other than the cards in the box. And to me, that's just kind of a Debbie Downer scenario when I look at every other game, even stuff that came out in 1995, because I'm staring at the Star Wars CCG box over here, and I know that dang thing has a rule book in it. And it's such a very vanilla, bland thing to ask for, as an example. But like, they may or may not ever go down that path, and that's their prerogative to do. Now, more than enough people, Sloop Dupe, I think, I've said it, several people have said, hey, it'd be nice to have that in there, because I think that that's just a good faith item to have in a box, especially if you don't want to leverage your smartphone to access the internet to be able to do those kind of things. But that's one example of listening to a player agency or complaints about the game. And maybe I'm taking this the wrong direction from your specific question, but I think that there has to be a balance between listening to what the players want and also knowing that if you piss off that player base, which I've seen happen in other card games, they will just straight up leave and go to another game. And obviously that's bad for the players and some other stuff. But then you have new blood that comes in because they like that. So it's this always ever balancing, scale that I think that they're, I would say, doing a fairly decent job at doing. But I guess it also depends. Everybody's different, right? I'm casual. Somebody might be more actually grindy tournament circuit, and those impact them in the decisions, like the Player of the Year award, right? That's a cool concept. That's something it came out with. And I think that that's going to be a nice addition for people that want to strive to be that thing. But I didn't hear anybody asking for that. They just kind of came up with that. So is that, am I misconstruing the question? Did I go down a whole different path on this, or is that kind of hopefully give you a little bit of a picture of where my brain's at with it.
No, I think you answered part of it. I just wanted to clarify when I say agency, what I mean is you having at least some say in what happens to you, and I specifically meant in game, right? So like there are certain classes that cannot beat other classes, right? If you sit down in that game, you have very little agency with which
Mechanologist versus pretty much any, illusionist, right? I think that I have a very hard time going against illusionist class. So I would say,
or warrior against illusionist, or ranger against illusionist.
Yeah.
Oh well, anyway, showing my colors here.
The sip component starts in play, stays in play. I that is interesting when you think about it in the player agency of that. I think it sucks to play those games, and I can clearly remember when Starvo was bigger, I would just almost not go to my armories on purpose because it was just not fun for me to sit down and basically pay the entry fee and just watch somebody roll over top of me. There are plenty of other things I can do for an hour of my life, that are more productive than sit there, pay money, and basically let somebody else win a prize, which is not necessarily the reason you go to those events, but it felt like that when that hero was the game. Now, looking at today in player agency wise, I think that there are a lot more options that exist, but I think that certain classes are always going to be lacking. I think that's just a fundamental component of the difference of Flesh and Blood compared to a Magic the Gathering, where you have color identities that you can technically slap in other things, right? You cannot, in the game of Flesh and Blood, take a ninja card and put it in a mechanologist deck unless you have those classes or talents or subtypes. So there is literal card pools you cannot access. But in games like Magic the Gathering, you could just add 1 or 2 extra mana or a card that produces some extra resource, slap that card into that deck and give you that agency back to say, I'm running a black deck, but now here's a white card that, destroys all creatures, Wrath of God, or whatever. You had some level of capability with that. So maybe there's a future world where there's some way to, over time, they're going to print a lot of things, I'm sure, but, I'm sure there's these lanes they want to keep the players in. So I would say player agency wise, I think we have enough player agency at the moment, but I still feel bad as a mechanologist player. Every time I see an illusionist, I'm just like, why do I want to play this game? Like, that's literally my thought that goes through my head is no matter how good I do, I just cannot beat that, is my personal skill level and thought. Some people say get good, right? But there's only so much getting good you can do.
And I think what you just said there is exactly what you ended with. There is exactly what I meant, right? It's like, why am I even going to play this game, right? And I know CYB is all the big topic right now, right? But like, if you looked at the finals game, the world's finals, like
that was grueling.
Couldn't mathematically come up with enough to beat that deck, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that new
this is more my example.
The conversation around that this is the proper fatigue and we're okay with that. That scares me a little bit. It does.
Yeah, it's a little scary.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, I think as far as I'm not entirely I'm not against the CYB hate. I understand why it exists and why there is that agency issue in regards to that, because 54 life is a lot to gain in a matter of a game. And in most cases, what the issue is that the game becomes a race where if you can deal significant amount of damage within 5 turns and they only see 3 CYB, you're in a pretty okay spot, right? And they can clear games. I mean, Sam Sutherland beat Rob Catton, I believe, for doing exactly that. He essentially just like got 80 damage on the board as a mechanologist.
Think about that statement. Think about that statement.
No.
80
and it's
damage.
a lot, but that's also because of High Octane, which they also banned. So I think what they did in this situation, at least in regards to like agency, there's a lot of moving parts in a deck regardless. And while there are some heroes that, some classes that can't beat other classes, I think the difference is who's really piloting that class and how it's made to happen. Because I think you can have a warrior. Like we had a Dorinthia take down our entire armory just 2 weeks ago, and like nobody's really like playing Dorinthia regularly besides the people who know only Dorinthia, and like that's just who she is. I feel like specialists have a much better time taking that hero and going, I can take this hero. I know what my bad matchups are, and I can certainly go ahead and adjust to the meta depending on what my bad matchups are. A lot of the times, whenever you're watching people's deck techs on top eights, they're like, yeah, I dodged my worst matchups, which is great, right? With so many people being in an event, the odds of that happening are probably pretty good.
Somebody
but at the
asked
end of the
me.
day, it's sorry, go ahead. What's up?
Oh, I was just saying, somebody had asked me at one point, it was a very interesting question about Flesh and Blood, as they said, is it like rock, paper, scissors? And then I said, Lizard Spock, because I don't think it's as simple as rock, paper, scissors, right? That's not the outcome. But it was intriguing when they asked me that question because it started a thought process in my brain that has actually been quite hard to get rid of, which is back to that type matching. And now I'm using, I guess, your word of player agency, right? Is if I am at an event where my XP is now on the line, as an example, for those, let's say, gym packs that are coming out that we don't know what they do, but maybe that's something that's going to be useful or cool or interesting prizes or whatever. But if I want to go and play that armory level and I do bad just because the dice roll came up kind of like the KO roll, 1 instead of a 6, okay, well, now I'm facing this class that I just can't do anything against. Does that help or hurt me long term? It gets interesting.
I think the concept that I keep in mind, and maybe this is just my very, very like poor optimistic choice, but I believe that if you really do know a hero well enough and you have taken the time to go to an armory every week against the same people over and over
Sure.
to learn their deck as well as your own, you can take down an armory on whatever hero you have. I mean, I just took down my armory on Vincent just this Monday.
Nice.
And it like Vincent is not, as far as many people would consider, an S or even like somewhat of an A tier hero in Classic Constructed. And a lot of it is just I put in the time to test out some lines, played a little bit of games on Talishar, didn't divulge off the deck when I lost 3 games my first time playing her. Like, the initial loss is what is the feels bad, right? And it's difficult because you see, for instance, the Night at the Armory video that 3 Floating made, where quite literally it's Jacob Bertrand just getting stomped by pro players at his armory. Like, that's the video. And at the end of the video, he's like, I want to do this again. That isn't the case with everybody. And in some cases, it is. Some people feel it's about what they've gotten out of it. If you play a deck that you're like, yeah, I'm just willing to give this a shot, and then everybody beats you and nobody gives you any kind of, critiquing or telling you how to do this, almost every armory I've gone to, especially when I was new, a big thing was if I didn't know anything about the hero and I didn't know anything about what they did or, how they functioned, my opponent, in most cases, had no problem telling me how to beat them. Like, they knew what their weaknesses were in their deck. And if my deck can perform in that situation, then it's a different thing. But as far as like the true agency of things, I think that I was happy to see both High Octane and Blue CYB go. Even with Blue CYB gone, most people are already trying to like not play CYB at all, right? Because you essentially lost like 24 life by losing a blue card, 2 or 3 blue cards. You lost like 24 life, which is insane to think about, that 3 cards can get you 24 life. And that is an agency issue. And as stated in the BNR, James White is like, he's like, this is what we like about a long game, right? This is what control should be, is you should be going down to those last moments where you're just like, cool, you didn't get your combo off right enough. you didn't play your cards in the correct sequence, you didn't properly pitch stack, you didn't do any of this stuff, and because of that, I got to take advantage of your opening, come in with something like disruption, because the second that Poison the Well got CNC'd, I mean, it was like nearly done. And so there was less agency in that game for sure, because of the setup, because of what was required of Aurora to beat Enigma. And I think that is due to change now that we see a ban in blue CYB, and most people even moving off of CYB entirely because 30 life is not worth like the 6 cards. You could just like block instead.
Andrew,
You have more valuable cards.
do you have thoughts on this before I ask my follow-up question to this?
Well, let me just float one more thing out there, right? When Zen was taking, I mean, there were a lot of very uber competitive players who were very vocal about how much they hated Zen, right, in his height, right? And the reason they didn't like him was why? It was because they weren't able to play their game before they lost. And I would challenge that CYB Enigma is the same experience, obviously on opposite spectrums, but some people just have no ability to do, like, they get to play their game and he gets to sit there and just be like, I take your game and I reject it. So I would argue that CYB Enigma gives the opponent just as much agency as a pop-off Zen would, the difference only being that it saves me 90 minutes.
So here's the $1 million question that's been going through my mind since Worlds ended. That last match was a best of 1, because that's how Flesh and Blood is. Would you expect to have seen any difference if it was a best of 3? And thoughts on how that may have changed or not, or would the play experience have been the same based on the fatigue component? Just a thought that's been going through my head that I would love to get another opinion on.
Interesting question. Probably would have ended the same. I mean, it wouldn't have ended with a CNC'd Poison the Well, probably, but
Okay.
I mean, yeah, that's interesting. What do you think?
I think overall it's we've been doing 2 out of 3s in Clash for a while now, and it's been effective in that manner because the games are initially short by design. And we've even, the Commoner League that's run online through the Flesh and Common Blood, they do best 2 out of 3 for their games. And again, just the overall shortness of the game, you can stack 2 Blitz games in the same time you could run a fully set up, like 2-time CC game. And so that's why these 2 out of 3s tend to be kind of like the premier thing for some of these events that I look into. But to do that in CC, if I, like, from a viewing perspective, right, if I were to watch that match with the same decks as a 2 out of 3, I don't think there's anything that could have changed in the Aurora list to have made it more strong into Enigma in that situation, because, like, you can't add a 3rd Poison the Well. You didn't have it. It wasn't in your deck list. You only had 2. And so sideboarding is different because you sideboard at the beginning. And so all of your package that you would normally put into this hero is already in there. So the only thing that assists with is that CYB is kind of a, well, for lack of a better word, it's an enigma. Most people don't know whether or not somebody's on CYB until they play that first card. And, it's not a staple Enigma deck. Enigma can run it, and it's probably one of the best decks to run CYB in, but, you've seen New run it. You've seen Enigmas without CYB get into top 8 of the World Championship. So it's not that it's like the key winning thing. It's just another way to play Fatigue. And I think that if it would help in regards to allowing a player to know what they're going against, then that's one thing. But in the top 8, you get to see your opponent's deck list. So you're not losing out on any of that information. You know exactly what you're going into, and you're going, okay, cool. They're definitely going to run CYB against me. I'm definitely going to tech against CYB. And then it comes down to whether or not the opponent is able to play every copy, right? If Mercy was able to get her combo off turn 4, like it might have been a completely different game in that regard. But because it just didn't come to her immediately, which again is that agency, right? You know, it's not just like going to magically show up. Like, you know, you stack for second cycle and then you're ready for that in second cycle. But by second cycle, your opponent could have gained 30, 40 life. And at that point you go, okay, my combo can't even deal like, you know, deal like 3/4 of that, but not the whole thing. And then they get to continue healing afterwards. It's effectively just like when you're done, you know, blowing out everything from your deck, your opponent just gets to go, okay, cool. That was neat. Good thing I healed. And then just continue on. So it's, if that was the case and it helped in those matchups to determine what you're going against, then that's cool. But I think I would genuinely, after the first game, if I knew there was going to be a second game of that, I would turn off the live stream. Simply because as much as I care about the players and how far they've come in the game, if I have to watch 2, maybe even 3 matches that go to overtime because they're untimed matches in top 8, like, that's a lot. That's a lot to dedicate for myself. And at that point, I'm just, I'd rather do anything else than sit there and watch 2.5 hours worth of the same game of Flesh and Blood.
But
and
you were talking just in concept though, right? Not in functionality, or were you actually proposing like a best out of 3 or best of 3?
I think it was more of a mental exercise because
Right.
when I look at, I would imagine there's a world where like if you were to take these 2 decks and play them 1,000 times against each other, if somebody did that mathematics and on Talishar you were able to look at the stats and who won and whatever, is there a lean toward that one deck was just poised to be, again, that maybe better choice in that top 8 bracketing, where it was essentially almost a statistical unlikeliness where this Aurora deck could literally not basically beat that other deck, the I guess the Enigma deck that was on top. That's the piece that I guess I don't understand, because I'm not as nuts and bolts as other people, but just it was so painful to watch that then my question was, well, would best of 3 have been a solution to let them reset? And because you're playing for such a huge amount of money, right? Best of 1, if you brick a horrible hand just because whatever, I mean, if I was Dash, because I mean, you can do this, you can get a hand of 4 items. If my first 2 hands were 4 items, next 2 hand 4 items, what do? Do you just walk away from the table, flip it, and say, F it, I'm done? Because, like, well, I mean, it could happen in a Dash.io deck. Then you got all the way to the top and you just got the worst shuffle of your life. Like, I don't know what kind of memes would come from that, right? But that would be just such the weirdest thing to happen. But at my armory, we had a statistical unlikelihood. It was Dash.io versus Dash.ie. I had 3 items in my starting hand. She had 3 items in her starting hand that were identical. I had 3 reds of whatever, and she had 3 blues, whatever. We showed it to 2 different people, and they said, you 2 need to go buy a lottery ticket right now. Like, it was just the weirdest thing that I've ever seen. But things like that could happen. So that was why I was curious about that. So,
yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where the sideboarding at the beginning of the game, I feel like, is enough to where you at least should be prepared for that. And then to top it all off, I guess I don't want to sound like crazy elitist when I say this, because I'm not like a pro player or whatever, but in most cases, if you're constantly running into these situations, then it's probably something in regards to the way you're building your deck that is causing for these brick hands consistently. But I mean, quite literally, I think it quite literally happened to Sam Sutherland in the top 4 match, where he kind of just drew items and was like, okay, pass. But like the same thing also happened to him when he was going against Michael Hamilton in the top 8. And he, the hands were just not as perfect as he'd like them to be. and he just sculpted and sculpted and sculpted and sculpted until he was like, all right, cool, I've got like 40 plus damage on board. We're going to make this happen. And he came in for exactly lethal against a CYB new. And so there's so much variance in card games. I can't even like get into the statistics. It'll hurt my brain to even think about, but like there's so many different things that could happen, and not a lot of them are within your power outside of like the creation of your deck. It's the same deal with Magic the Gathering in a sense, not anywhere near as like detrimental, but like if you draw a land and you needed a creature, and your hand is okay, cool, I guess I'll pass, and then you draw another card and it's a land, and you're like, shit, okay, I'm still not getting anything, and you draw a third land. Like at that point you feel awful, and you might as well just like scoop it up and move to the next game. And that's just something that can happen. But sideboarding happens in between the games there, and they normally are just like, okay, cool, I ran into too many lands, I'm going to take out some lands, put in some creatures. But in Flesh and Blood, our sideboards are strictly based around certain heroes in our game plans. So if you went, yeah, my aggressive package against Enigma didn't work, what do you put in afterwards? Like, do you go a defensive route? Do you just turn it around and say, okay, I'll play on your terms. You just keep doing things. I'll keep swinging Starfall. And then eventually one of us will just like run out of stuff to play. So Aurora's plan is not to go long. Aurora wants the game to be over quickly. And Enigma's game, regardless of what plan it is to go long. And that's why, they're considered a premier control deck with CYB because of these specific reasons. So it's, I always continue at you said it's not like rock, paper, scissors. In a way, it is a little bit like rock, paper, scissors, in which you have aggro that tends to, in most situations, beat mid-range. Mid-range tends to beat control. Control tends to beat aggro. And that dynamic is in most TCGs. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments or whatever, but like that's the triangle that I kind of think about, right? If my meta is full of aggro, I want to play control because my control is going to be able to they're going to slam their whole hand out. They're going to run out of gas, and I'm going to go, okay, cool, it's my turn. Sweet. You have no cards left in your deck. I'm going to just swing at you with a tiny little, dagger, and then your game's over. So it's just it's card games.
Andrew, any additional thoughts on that?
I think we're good.
Cool. Well, one last fun, interesting piece of note is I sent you guys a link to theirs. I guess I found the deck links on Fabry, and it looks like there's about 180 something matches for the World Champion #1 deck, which is the Gregor Kowalski deck, and then the Mercy Bickles deck has 395 games, which is a lot more, with an interesting win rate of 39. But take that with a grain of salt, because obviously any skill level, any player is probably trying that out, right? So, like I said, I'd be curious to see if you stuck those two decks in a room and had those go head to head for 500 times, what the result might be. But I guess I don't care that much to actually try that experiment. So.
I think it's an interesting experiment for sure, but I think at the end of the day, it's you're betting on statistics, and if the statistics end up being like, yeah, cool, you can win 1 out of every 100 games, it's just a loss. Like, just consider it a loss at that point. So that's how I view it. It's not that you shouldn't play the hero, right? Like, if your armory is literally only CYB Enigma, if like 8 people are on CYB Enigma, don't go. Like, just don't do it. If it's literally the most toxic place in which people are like, I'm only going to play the winning deck, and it's all going to be this exact same thing, and it's just copy paste right off of Fabry, you have better things to do. You can go play on Talishar and at least get like a wide swath. Go get like 4 of your closest friends, or 3 of your closest friends, go play UPF. You can get people together to go do a fun commoner crawl and just hang out at a bar and just do stuff. There's thousands of more things to do in Flesh and Blood than just play Classic Constructed in an armory. And that's why I think it's also important that things like Blitz and Commoner and UPF and all these other things exist, because when people are sick of a meta, they're gonna want to quit. And if they quit, they're gonna that's a loss in revenue for LSS. They'll leave. They won't come back until like a talent that they really enjoy
Necromancer.
is
Till
back on the
Necromancer.
menu. Right. Or until a new class is announced and they'll be like, okay, I'm back in. But if you give them something that's like more casual, maybe it's a little bit more like spiky, so it's a little less like, you don't have to worry so much about the same BS that's happening in Classic Constructed, and you just want to like hang around and like have fun. There are thousands of other ways to play Flesh and Blood. And so don't hurt yourself because the meta's like this, and don't sit around waiting for a ban to happen. Like, just enjoy the game. Continue enjoying the game the way you want to enjoy it, and you'll have a fantastic time.
So, Andrew, I'm going to begin to start rewinding this down so that we can kind of hit a semi-middle target on what we're hoping to try to do for a time on this. Kind of one of the more, I guess, fundamental questions I was wanting to save to the end is more of a fun one, is kind of leaning into that, the Hunted set. And, we got some things coming up with that. The Oops All Arachne that became from a joke to reality. And, with set 16 in the future, what kind of general heroes or hero mechanics might you like to see if you could kind of jump into the developer shoes for one set?
I've wondered often how a poison mechanic would fit into Flesh and Blood. Now I know that like Magic has a poison, which is where I think it's 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just collect them, and there's no real way, to my knowledge, to get rid of them. That's not necessarily what I was thinking about, but I play another game. It's an online game where you can collect basically like toxicity counters, and at the beginning of the round, you remove one, and then you take damage equal to the number you have, and then you remove one. Right? So if you had 3 on, you would take 3 damage and then go to 2, and then the next turn you'd take 2 damage and go to 1.
That sounds like
I
a
think
blood
that'd be
pox
really
token,
neat.
kind of.
Yeah, but it's like a cumulative type of.
Okay.
Yeah. So that'd be kind of cool to somehow put it on, but that might get pretty. People are pretty creative in Fab when they probably figure out how to get 400 tokens on you on turn 1, and then they just sink below all game. So.
There's some ridiculous stuff. Somebody asked me, like, with the new Jarl, I said, oh, look, it's a one-handed pull weapon. I can run 2 of these. And the immediate reaction from everybody was, why would you ever run 2 of them? And I'm like, I don't know, because it's one-handed and I can. And I would just see what would happen. It's like, where there's a will, there's somebody going to find a way to break the fact that it has a certain piece of game text on it. I'm positive.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, I'm going to at least, I guess, go to my overhead camera here if I can pull this off right without screwing it up. Boop. There we go. I want to have to refocus, but this way you can have a fun, awesome pack there. Since I don't know what do you know about this set? Like, I guess I don't know too much about it. Is this?
Convergence was a really fun set. It was kind of their first foray into what Magic would call tribal. There was like a lot of like trooper synergy if you were, trooper or scoundrel or pilot or whatever type synergy.
So is the major hit
you see on the
this...
back there? You see on the back there's Phasma. Yeah, she was actually a really cool character.
So the rarity system in this, is it anything like Flesh and Blood, or if you see the dice, do you know exactly what you get based on the dice?
Yeah, the color on the die will tell you what the rare.
I thought that was a clever design component.
So that is, I think that's a Corrin tracker, I think.
Green. I mean, the artwork's kind of cool. I do like the kind of the card design component of when you start looking at, like, it's not CG cartoony art.
God, that is just making me think that I've never heard of this one before, of Destiny, and seeing Kylo art on there was like jarring, because I was like, how old is Force Awakens now?
This
gotta be so old.
Does this have a manufacturing date on it? This one says
that was pre-COVID, so it was probably 2019.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess Force Awakens definitely was out. God.
Oh, Force Awakens was like 2016.
Yeah, that's so far away. Why does it still feel so new?
I don't know. It's kind of like me thinking about Jurassic Park and my hilarious, Jurassic Park stuff, because that's is that a good character at least? It seems like that's kind of fun.
No, it's not a super good character.
Oh, okay.
Dang.
Dang. Well, maybe
Get
we can
hosed.
maybe we can redeem ourselves with this crazy Neopet. One of the interesting things about trying to like look at different games sometimes is just like the packaging, the card stock, just different things. It's something I like to do just to kind of understand the differences between the different games that exist because, as an example, I have some MetaZoo cards that I don't know why I managed to get a hold of them, but like the card stock on those is pretty wild. But like this here has like a pretty interesting, like a glossy back to it when you compare that to like a fab card that doesn't really, that's in a case, probably not a good example, but it's very shiny compared to.
What game is this?
This is
Neopets.
This came out at Gen Con. I had a couple of random
interesting.
packs laying around, and obviously the way the art style in the game is very different than when you start comparing different types of things.
Very Pokemon-esque.
Yeah,
in a way.
I think we actually got a pretty good card in this one because I can kind of see a weird sliver of something in the back I probably shouldn't be seeing, but the art style on this is just it's a very different direction. It looks.
I'm telling you, if you haven't been playing, if you have not been
Whoa.
playing
Look at
Neopets,
that.
then that's one thing.
Look at
I
that.
like that. That's like a mirror.
That's a heck
crazy.
of a foil, yeah. It's just like the reflectiveness.
Wow.
Of
That's
that.
spiffy.
That's a pretty big art. Holy moly, what is this? That's like the
Wow.
Pokemon style. Like, look at the wavy lines. Can you even see all the texture in the
I think I
individual
almost saw it.
art
Yeah, it kind of looks like
right there? You can
like the
kinda see-
backside where it's like a pulse.
like the fingerprints. It has like individual like micro lines.
Oh, it's got the striations in it.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the that was what I think I saw through the thing. You got.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, it's
Nice.
always a feels good when you get a card, and that's I mean, Flesh and Blood does one foil per pack, so I guess if you really want, there's
Some have two of them.
some have two. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I bet it's like we're just sitting here chilling. He just pulled like a $10,000 Neopets card or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, as a matter of fact, like
I
I gotta
maybe
go check out whether the blade of whatever the hell that thing is
there are scratch off cards in this game apparently.
in Neopets.
Yeah, we
That sounds
hit
about
one-
right.
We hit one of those at Gen Con.
I don't know if you've ever played Neopets, Andrew, but it's
No.
it's an online like pet simulator. You can like hatch animals and then like
Oh, it's like a
play
Tamagotchi.
games with them. Yeah, effectively. Yes, it's just that. So it's pretty much the same deal, except I don't know how the card game plays, but like Neopets is like millennial nostalgia for the most part. So you end up seeing a lot of people being like, "Whoa, Neopets, that's crazy."
So like these are so I collect old packs of just random stuff. So I think I saw in one of your videos where you did your whole set guide, Andrew. You had physical packs for your stuff. So I've been slowly collecting one of, or in this case multiple of. But if there's a set you like, we can open a pack and randomly see what we get. These are all the newer stuff. Dusk Till Dawn sketch cards.
Oh, so dude, right now Dust Till Dawn. Well, it looks like that's your only pack, but right now Dust Till
I have
Dawn
a whole
is
box
like
full of them behind me.
pretty good value actually.
All
Hell
right.
yeah, it is.
Obviously, if you hit right, but
Let's see. Let's roll the dice. I haven't opened a pack in a while, so this is why I'm kind of jonesing to open something.
Man's just getting his kicks off right here on camera.
The better half, the wife, she's the one that opens all the card packs and gets all the good stuff. I don't really get all the good stuff. So.
why
on.
isn't she opening them then?
Banner out of Courage. Daddy needs a new Banner out of Courage.
Right?
Is that shot up recently?
Oh, I don't know. I need one. I was looking for my Volta deck. the other day.
He just needs it.
I'll mail it to you. If we hit it, it's yours.
Who would you get?
Vile
Rift
Inquisition?
Skitter,
Wall Breakers. Some of this art, though, I
Lopkiss.
I will have to say
Lopkiss.
though that even with, let's say, a feels bad pack, right, or whatever, that people would be like, this is nothing good. Like the art itself, some of these I would just love to have as actual art on a wall, mostly because those are, just some of the more unique. I miss flavor text too. That's I've said that in other. I think somebody else mentioned it too. But like, there's just a lack of flavor text in Flesh and Blood that I hope one day they bring a majority of that back to give us more flavor text. So
Yeah, I've always enjoyed. I think it was one of the things that drew me into Flesh and Blood in the first place was the foiling on Monarch cards. and I was like, dang, this is actually pretty
Can,
sick.
can I use
I
this
like
as
this
a
a lot.
warrior sword in Flesh and Blood? Can I just like this is a dagger for 1?
Oh, turns out
I
also that card is like $9.
Oh,
Oh,
sweet, cool, most expensive thing we opened. I still okay, Andrew. How can we make generic? Will we ever see a generic weapon other than Talishar? I personally would
I
love
hope
to have
so.
one.
like
My
a
merchant
generic
needs
pistol
something.
that can shoot.
A generic,
generic
pistol, a
pistol.
generic sword, a generic knife. Like I don't know. I feel like there can be at least a couple. I kind of made the joke that it could be like a 1 attack for 1, a 2 attack for 2, a 3 attack for 3. Like there could be a dagger, a sword, and a rapier or whatever, and those would be 3 options. And then maybe a pistol that, obviously, you can't use steam counters, but maybe it's a 6 shot that only has 6 bullets for the whole game or whatever. Like a Western theme or something.
Yeah,
Sky's
I
the
hope
limit.
so. I hope so because having like poor Cavdane who has to survive all game to do what he wants to do only gets 3 weapon swings. That sucks.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not a good feel. It's not a good feel.
But
I know it's
that
like
person is a legend who got the first living legend point for Cavdane. Like whoever put him on the leaderboard, double thumbs up. Like
Well, you know the legend of that, right?
no, I don't.
Is that they all agreed to show up and play Cavdane at that dance event.
No kidding.
That's the legend. That's as the legend goes.
So I sent this to Alex last week, and I'll send it to you if you're interested too. But I really want to find a way to get Melody. I want to get points on the board for Melody. I think that would be super awesome. And I've been deck teching with like basically a bunch of generic cards, but like
go to a skirmish with like 8 people and then tell them you have a really funny idea.
Here, everybody.
then-
Here's your copy of the Melody deck. I made 8 of them.
They'll eat it up. They'll eat it up. You can just make everybody play Melody, and it'll be a fun time. I mean, that's like genuinely the only skirmish I've ever been to has just literally been like the most chill event I've ever been to in my life. I didn't feel like anything was at stakes. I feel like nothing was the case, and like they were prizing, but like Min-Max is just like handing stuff out, just like cool. You show up to the skirmish, here you go. Like you got I like this. I'm not gonna like completely turn this I won at
That is cool.
skirmish. I got like the full big Briar card, and so that was kind of a fun thing to do, and so I had a great time. I think that if you went to a skirmish with next to no people, you could easily put some points on Melody. Somebody could.
Or find a skirmish that has a cap, create 32 gem accounts,
This
buy
guy.
Buy 32
guy.
tickets.
Buy 32 tickets, $320 maybe at bus.
profit.
Show up with
Profit.
2 people.
That's it. That's what we're doing. We're
Top
gonna,
2, Melody versus Melody. There we go. You heard it here
Melody
first.
Gate. We're gonna Melody Gate these things.
I'm sure they would DQ that and probably ban me for something just for. There's no sense in doing that.
Well, they could ban maybe 31 of your accounts, but I don't know about the others.
They would almost certainly retcon something there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, with all that fun, I feel like we should probably wrap this episode up. So I greatly appreciate both of you for hanging out and enjoying this conversation. It's been super fun. So thank
Good.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it.
For folks that may not know, because you live under a rock, because these two are rock stars in the Fab ecosystem.
Oh, shush.
Where can people find either of you in case you are first time seeing this and have lived under a rock for forever? So we'll start with, I guess, above me. This is always a joke because every time I do it, it's backwards. So we'll point to. I'm pointing to Andrew in this one.
Yeah, so you can find me at Dice Commando on the YouTubes. It's youtube.com/Dice Commando, all one word. But I'm pretty sure if you Google Dice Commando, I think it comes up first. I think so. But yeah, we do
pretty unique guy.
2 to 3 videos a week.
Correct.
Pretty consistently.
First,
And,
result. You're paying for good search services. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I have 2 to 3 videos a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. Very rarely less, but sometimes more.
Excellent. And
There you go.
Alex, what about you?
Well, if you've been watching this podcast for a long time, you certainly know where to find me. But you can find me at Ashenwings TCG on YouTube. I make a whole bunch of, well, I don't make as much content as Andrew does because I often come home and want to rot. But I make a whole bunch of budget videos for people to kind of get into Flesh and Blood, talk about some nice hot topics. We also have our podcast, The Common Language, which I do on my channel. Haven't had any guests on there yet, but I don't know. I might do that at some point. Not quite sure how I want to make that happen, but outside of that, you can find me there. I'm also on Blue Sky at ashenwings.bsky.social. Find me there.
Yeah, everybody moved over. It's like Twitter
I like
drain.
it.
They just pulled the
it's cool.
plug and everybody went from here to Blue Sky.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm still on Elon Musk's thing. So.
There you go. It's fine. I think it's it's a lot of people I've heard as there's a lot of artists that don't want to move over to Blue Sky strictly because like there's not as much engagement there. But Blue Sky I think just hit recently the #1 most downloaded social media platform on the Play Store for the US and UK. So something's happening, but I've enjoyed my time over there. Obviously, whatever. I'm also still on Twitter, but I don't go on it as frequently, so it's still there.
Well, enjoy, have fun. Definitely enjoy the Portland calling, battle hardened, and commoner stuff. All that. I'll look forward to seeing that when you get it posted. So I'll keep an eye out for that. So
yeah, hopefully I can get it up super fast.
see you,
Thank you.
everybody. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Ta-da! We made it.
Yeah. Good stuff.